Hey everyone! So I figured I would do my birth video, or my birth story video. I do have footage of my birth, but I would have to edit it for it to be PG, and I'm not sure that I want to do that. Yeah! You want to show everybody your smile? You show everybody your smile? He's down there smiling at me. This is Wyatt. He is 6.5 weeks old. He'll be 7 weeks on Wednesday. Today's Sunday. So, he just ate, so he should be pretty happy throughout the video. Might fall asleep. So, my last pregnancy update was, I believe, at 25 weeks. So, I honestly had a pretty uneventful pregnancy. The only thing that really went wrong was that I had high blood pressure, which I had before I got pregnant. So it just carried on throughout my pregnancy. And I was on medication for it. And around 36 weeks, the medication it didn't stop working, it just stopped working as well. So they upped my dosage, and I went from 250 milligrams 3 times a day to 500 milligrams 3 times a day. And that seemed to work for a couple of weeks. And then on July 28th, which was a Tuesday, after not sleeping the night before, I went to my 39-week 4-day prenatal appointment. And when the nurse checked my blood pressure, just at my regular appointment, it was a little bit high. So we did my appointment, and then they took me down for a non-stress test, which I had been doing every week since 36 weeks. They took me down for that, and then they, hooked me up to the heart rate and contraction monitor, and also the blood pressure cuff, so they could do like a serial of blood pressure readings. And Wyatt was reactive on the test. He wasn't at first, but I hadn't eaten. So my midwife went and got me some juice, and literally as soon as I sat up to actually drink the juice, he started moving. So I'm pretty sure that it wasn't low blood sugar or anything. It was just the position I was in. Because he didn't move a whole lot when I was laying down at home. Because I don't know, he just liked it when I was sitting up. So he was reactive, and he was fine, and I was having some small contractions, and as of that appointment, I was dilated to a 4, and I was 90% effaced, she said. So I had, favorable cervix. I probably would have gone into labor any day, but because the serial of blood pressure readings they were all high, in the 160 over 110 range, which is pretty high. She said, "How do you feel about being induced today?" And I was like, well, it's kind of a terrible day for it, but, whatever. So, she called the hospital to make sure that they had room for me. And then, they did. There was only, one other person in labor at the time, and they have, 8 labor and delivery rooms or something. So, she told me to go home and get Brandon and get my stuff and try and be back at the hospital by noon. So my appointment was at 9 o'clock, and by the time we got everything figured out, it was probably around 10. So I hadn't slept, and I was pretty exhausted, but after that I kind of had adrenaline running. And I definitely cried on the way home because I knew that induction, it could go badly, even though I had a favorable cervix, and I was worried that I would end up with a C-section, which was my worst fear. And I also knew that because I had high blood pressure, I was most likely not going to have the water birth that I actually wanted. I would be able to have one even though I was being induced, but only if my blood pressure stayed low throughout labor, and when I'm in pain, my blood pressure skyrockets. So it was most likely not going to happen. But I had a little cry on the ride home, and you know, I got home and I woke Brandon up and we got my stuff and I tried to eat something, but I wasn't really hungry, which was probably not good because I didn't get to eat a whole lot that day. So we got everything loaded up and got back to the hospital, and I think it was around 11:30 when we got there. We had to wait in the lobby to get, you know, checked in and signed in. Like, they knew I was coming, so they, you know, had a room ready for me and everything. But I had to sign in at the front desk and, you know, do all the paperwork down there. And then a nurse came down and took us up, and I walked. They asked me if I wanted a wheelchair, and I was like, no, I think I can walk. I did say that if I was in active labor, I probably would have asked for the wheelchair, but no. It was not very far at all. So we walked up to the labor and delivery area. They had my room already, and the rooms were like absolutely gigantic. I will maybe do a vlog, like a video montage of my birth photos when I get them. I'm supposed to get them next weekend, so you might be able to see in there how big the rooms are. But they're huge because you can have a water birth at that hospital in those rooms, so they just bring the tub in, and they're gigantic. Anyway, I got in, and we got our stuff all put away, and I asked if it was okay if I labored in my own clothes, and they were fine with that. So I went and I changed into the clothes that I had packed for labor. I just found like a $10 skirt at Walmart that was black and knee length, and I was like, I don't care if this gets ruined because it was $10. And, yeah? Tell me all about it. My goodness. So I did that, and then I had on like a sports bra and a tank top. In hindsight, the tank top was probably pointless because I had it pulled up to my bra anyway because I had, you know, the monitors and stuff on. But, you know, whatever. So got changed and I got in bed, and the nurse was there and she was asking me all sorts of questions, you know, how they do. And made sure I wasn't allergic to anything. I was group B strep positive, so they had to give me antibiotics, and I had three doses during labor. By the time we got up to the room, it was probably about 12:15, I think. And so all of this stuff took about an hour and a half. She got my IV started, did lab work. They like draw your blood. I don't know why they draw your blood, but they do labs, like baseline labs before you know, get in, and all of that. And she got me hooked up to the antibiotics, and then they started my Pitocin at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I should have slept. I should have taken that time to have a nap, but I made sure that my birth photographer was on the way, and then I texted her and said, like, surprise, we're having a baby today. Because originally I wasn't going to tell anybody that, aside from our birth photographer, that I was in labor, because I didn't really want anyone there. But at the last minute, I decided to text my best friend and tell her that I was there, and I said, you can come up here if you want to. And so she did, and she stayed the whole time. So I was honestly expecting to feel pain fairly quickly, because I've heard all of the horror stories about Pitocin and how terrible it is and how awful your contractions get. I did not experience that. Not really. They start you out, you know, at like a 2 on the Pitocin, and then increase it in increments of 2. They never increased mine past a 16, but I, from 2 o'clock when they started the Pitocin until 9 o'clock when my midwife broke my water, I did not feel anything. About 8 o'clock, I started feeling mild cramping during contractions, And the whole time when I would have a contraction, my belly would get really tight and my belly button would pop out. So like I could tell that I was having contractions, but I couldn't feel them at all. So I wasn't in any pain or discomfort or anything, which was actually kind of nice. So my midwife, my favorite midwife happened to be on call that night. She came on at 6, but didn't actually get to the hospital until around 9. So she got there around 9 and checked me. And when she checked me, she said I was a stretchy 5, so like she could stretch me to a 6, but I was actually a 5. So I dilated 1 centimeter in that whole span of time, and we decided to break my water just to help things move a little bit faster. And as soon as she broke my water, things started getting pretty intense. I started having to like actually breathe through contractions, and you know, I labored in bed for a little while, and then I got kind of uncomfortable, so I asked them to bring me a ball, and so I labored on the ball for a little bit, and the whole time I'm like gushing fluid every time I move, which was gross, and like I was just wet all of the time because there was like water streaming down my legs. Yeah, that's something no one ever tells you. When your water breaks, it just keeps coming out. Like, you don't get a break. So I was laboring on the ball, and, you know, I was breathing through contractions, and Brandon was really good at helping, you know, remind me to breathe, and he held my hands. And my midwife, it was awesome because she didn't have any other patients in labor. She had one patient there who was being monitored, but she wasn't actually in labor. So she stayed in my room the entire time. Like, once she got there, she left, I think, once to check on her other patient, and then she was in my room the whole rest of the time. She rubbed my back, she talked to me, we listened to music, you know, we were watching History Channel for a while, you know, talking and joking, and I had a really, really good labor. My friend would take turns trading off with the midwife rubbing my back, because Wyatt was anterior, but I had pretty bad back labor. I thought he was going to be posterior because of the back labor, but he wasn't. I have my birth notes. Around, hang on, I'm sure it says what time. Yep, around 12:38, my midwife checked me and she said I just had a rim of cervix remaining, so just like a little lip, and I said that I needed to go pee. So I was trying to get out of bed during, like, I was standing up during part of my labor, like, and then I got too tired to stand up anymore. I was like leaning over the bed and like moaning through contractions, and you know, Brandon kept telling me, you know, remember to breathe, and I was like, if I'm moaning, I'm breathing. And he was really good about, you know, asking me if I needed water, but at the time it was like really annoying to me. Every time he would be like, do you need a drink? And I would be like, no, oh my god, no. So I eventually got back into the bed, and I didn't think that I would want to labor in the bed, but it was honestly like the most comfortable for me. I started to get really, really hot, so they got me like a cold wash rag to put on my face, and then I you know, my midwife checked me, and I said that I had to go pee, and I was trying to get out of bed in the middle of not in the middle of a contraction, but between contractions. And then they started coming really fast, and so I didn't get out of bed in time, and the contraction, like, just, it made me pee. I had no control over it, I just peed. And I looked at my midwife and I said, I just peed. And she was like, okay, that's okay, just get up and try and go to the bathroom anyway. So they got me to the bathroom. I'm like trailing along my little IV pole with me, and I have really dry skin. I keep scratching, I'm sorry. As soon as I got onto the toilet, my body started pushing on its own, and Gretchen, my friend, told me afterward that the nurse that was in the room put in a call to the nurse's station saying, if I press this button, come running because she might have this baby on the toilet. They thought I was going to actually push him out there. But I didn't. I got back into bed. It says... Okay, it doesn't say what time, but I got back into bed and it was probably right around 1. Does it say? Oh, yep, it says that I was complete at 12:53, so she must have checked me again when I got back into bed. And I started pushing then, and we had like my labor playlist going, so I had really nice music, well, nice to me. It was a really, really random playlist, I'm sure, to anyone else, but had a lot of Zac Brown Band, and like, there was an Ed Sheeran song, and Birdie, and just, it was random. Sister Christian was on there. I don't know why, but it was. So I started pushing just before 1, and while I was pushing, he had a really big head, and so it took quite a while for him to like really crown, and I was making progress, but it took a while for his head to like really come down. And so during that time, they were kind of having trouble finding his heart rate on the monitor. I knew he was fine because I could feel him moving the whole time. But they couldn't really find him on the monitor. And so, I guess they were whispering, and Brandon noticed it, but he didn't say anything to me, and no one was saying anything to me about it. But, they were like repositioning the monitor all the time during my contractions. And if I ever put up my birth video, if I'm able to leave the sound in, because there is copyrighted music in it, but if I'm able to leave the sound in, you might hear me say at one point, that hurt so bad. It wasn't the contraction that I was talking about, or the pushing part. It was them pushing the monitor into my stomach. That hurt really bad. So, yeah, they were doing that, and then at 1:54, I pushed his head out, and then the rest of him just shot out. So he was born completely, like, in that one push. Normally, babies' heads come out and they stop and take a break and rotate a little. No, not Wyatt. He just decided once his head was out, he was ready. And he had a true knot in his cord. It was quite tight, and his cord was over his shoulder and through his legs, so it was like wrapped around his whole body. And it had to have been like that literally from the time I was 16 weeks, because when I had my 16-week ultrasound, he was head down, and he stayed head down the rest of the time. He never flipped. So he had to have somehow swam into that knot before 16 weeks. I'm talking so much, I'm so thirsty. So yeah. So when he came out, because of the knot in the cord and it being around his shoulder, they said that it got compressed as he was, descending through the birth canal. And that's one reason they couldn't keep his heart rate on the monitor. And then he was limp and pale when he came out and not crying. So they didn't get to put him on my chest immediately. They set him on my stomach for just a second and, rubbed him to try and perk him up a little bit. And then they clamped and cut his cord immediately and took him to the warmer. So I didn't get delayed cord clamping, and I didn't get, the golden hour with him just on my chest. That is their goal. Their goal is to always delay cord clamping and have baby directly on mom's chest right after birth, but he wasn't crying, so they took him. And then as soon as they got him on the warmer, it wasn't 30 seconds later that he cried, and we heard him. And it was like the best sound ever. He's passed out now. So, he was fine. But because it had taken him so long, his first APGAR was a 1, and his second one at 5 minutes, excuse me, his second one was a 7, so he perked up. But because he was, not breathing right away, and it took them a second to get him going, they decided that it was best if he went to the NICU for a few hours, So they brought him over all wrapped up like a burrito and let us see him for just a minute before he went. You know, our photographer got some pictures of him with us, and I think she got some of him on the warmer and all that stuff. But they brought him over all burritoed, and we got to say hi and we love you and sent him off to the NICU. And they started him an IV in his head and gave him some fluids, and they like drew labs and stuff. He had like bruises on his wrists where they had to stick him. Oh yeah, so sleepy, so sleepy. He's sitting here like, Okay. So once they took him, they started working on me. I didn't have like excessive blood loss or anything. I delivered my placenta at 2:15, so about 20 minutes after he was born. They didn't like pull on it or anything. I was like, I might have to push, and I pushed, and it came out. They found that I had a 2nd-degree midline tear, so they called in the OB that was on call to repair that. I guess my midwife only does like minor repairs, and I had a pretty significant one, so they called in the OB to repair it, and that was no big deal. They numbed me up and gave me stitches, and it was all good. I didn't even feel them numb me, which was strange because I've had shots of lidocaine before and felt them, but not this time. Which I suppose was a blessing after, you know, pushing out a baby. So Wyatt was 7 pounds, 12 ounces, and 21.5 inches long. So he wasn't a huge baby, which surprised all of us because we thought he was going to be quite big. I didn't have gestational diabetes, but I did measure at least a week ahead at every one of my appointments after they started, you know, measuring my fundal height. And at my appointment the day before, I had measured 41 weeks at 39 weeks, 4 days. So we thought he was going to be huge, but I guess I just had a lot of fluid, which, given how much came out when she broke my water, is probably a fair assessment. So that all went okay, and then they said that I could be transferred to the mother-baby unit after I was able to get up and go to the bathroom. So I did that probably within an hour. I waited because Brandon, after they got me all cleaned up, Brandon got to go to the NICU to see Wyatt, and he brought back pictures and videos and all of that good stuff. I was able to, you know, see him from the pictures and videos before I ever really got to see him. And Brandon got to hold him for just a second while they changed his bedding. So Brandon got to hold him, and that was, it was really nice for him. He got just, you know, like a private moment with him. So I got up and I got changed into an actual hospital gown because after labor, of course, I was like, just give me the gown, that's fine. I didn't really want to wear pants. So I just had the hospital gown. And I was able to go to the bathroom, and then they called in a nurse from Mother Baby to transfer me down there. And I got wheeled over, and then we basically set down all of my stuff in Mother Baby, and I was like, take me to the NICU. So we went, and he was actually in a room really, really close to my room. It was like the very last one in the hall, so it was close to the doors. And then the way the hospital's set up is the NICU is like inside the Mother Baby unit. So like the hallway doors were here, and then my room was like over here. It was like 3 doors down. So it was really, really close. And I got to see him and hold him. They still had the IV in his head, but he was no longer like hooked up to the actual IV. They just had him on like the monitors and stuff because they have to do that in the NICU, I guess. So I'm sure I've said like 8 million times in this video. I apologize. But I got to hold him, and he nursed for the first time. He latched on and did really well. We nursed probably for about a half an hour on both sides, and then just held him and cuddled for a while, skin to skin, and then probably around, I want to say like 4:30 or 5, Brandon and I decided that we would leave him there because he had to stay until the perinatologist came in and gave the okay to release him. So we decided we would leave him there and go back to my room and try and get a little bit of sleep, and maybe order some food from the cafeteria, and then come back in the morning, you know, it was already morning, but later in the morning, and wait for the perinatologist to come in. So we did that, and I slept, I don't know, maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours, and then they called me to come feed him. And so I left Brandon to sleep in my room, and then went down and fed him, and once he was done eating, it was about time for the perinatologist to make rounds, and I guess I was like the very first one. They must start at the end of the hall and work their way towards the, you know, the rest of the babies. Or they start with the least sick babies. So the perinatologist, you know, said, you know, he looked fine and everything was good. So they released him to us, and I think it was around 8:30 or 9 in the morning, and we got to go back to my room, and he was with us the rest of the time. Because I was strep B positive, I had to stay for 2 days, and then he had to stay for 2 days because he was in the NICU. So we stayed for, you know, a full 48 hours, probably a little over that. So in total I was in the hospital for like 3 days because, you know, most of Tuesday, then Wednesday, Thursday, and we left on Friday. But yeah, I'm not sure where I was going with that. But we left on Friday, came home, and he's been with us since then. This is a really long video, but I'm going to go ahead and go through, you know, his first month and a half of life-ish. So we got home on Friday, and then, which was the 31st of July, 31st of July. The next day we had a checkup with his pediatrician, and they did a heel stick to check his bilirubin levels, and I think it was that night, or the next day maybe, or Monday, we got a call that his bilirubin was high, and, oh no, it was Sunday. They called us and let us know that his bilirubin was high and asked us to come back on Monday for a recheck. So we went back on Monday, they checked him again, and it had gone up even more. So that night, they had us take him back to the hospital, and they readmitted him into the pediatric intensive care unit. And they put him under the Billy lights and all of that. And he went home just under 24 hours later. Like, it had come down. I started supplementing. He got, you know, just a little bit of formula during that time. And so, up until that point, he had just been breastfed, but my milk never really came in. So, I started supplementing him with formula in the hospital, and he did really good with switching back and forth from breast to bottle. And he has continued to do really well with that. But we came home, and I stopped supplementing because I didn't think it was, they told me that I didn't really need to do that anymore. They just said, keep breastfeeding. And so the next day, he had another checkup, and they did a heel stick, and his bilirubin had gone up from what it was when he was released from the hospital. So the nurse practitioner, not the pediatrician, called us and said that we should take him back to the hospital again, which sucked. But we took him in to the ER, and they admitted him through triage to the NICU this time. And we went up, and this time they decided that the reason for his jaundice was that he was dehydrated, which, if you know anything about jaundice, jaundice makes you less likely to want to eat, and then you get more dehydrated because of that. And so he was dehydrated because he wasn't getting enough milk from me, and then also because he wasn't wanting to eat as often because of the jaundice. So they gave him an IV so that they could start him on fluids, which took forever. They tried in both of his hands and then finally tried in his head. And part of the reason it was so hard is because he was dehydrated, so his veins weren't as, enlarged. But they finally got the IV in. They brought me formula so that I could supplement him, but they still wanted me to breastfeed him. So I would nurse him for a while, and then give him a bottle of formula. Because I have PCOS, I knew that I might have trouble, so I had purchased a supplemental nursing system, which I'm going to do a video on. I purchased one of those, so I had brought it with me, and I was able to give him supplement through that. And then they also brought me like syringes and a gavage tube so that I could use that, because I only had like one of the SNS things with me, and I had to wash it every time, and that gets tiresome. And so we were in the hospital from like Thursday evening until Saturday morning. He was finally able to come home, and since then he's been fine. And so we've been home consistently since then. And then the day after he came home, we did a family reunion, which was, crazy. He was like a week old. But yeah. So since then we have been, supplementing with formula pretty consistently. He takes 3 ounces of formula per feed now. But we are using the SNS for almost every feed. He still does get a bottle every now and again. Brandon will feed him, or, I'll take a break from nursing and just give him a bottle, and he goes back and forth really well. He's actually refused the bottle before. He's never refused the breast, but he has refused the bottle. And yeah, we tried donor milk, once, and it didn't work out very well. I think the milk had high lipase, and he was not having it. It did not sit well with him. So we've just been using formula, and he's doing really well. He's up to, I use my luggage scale to weigh him here. At his 1-month doctor's appointment, he was 9 pounds, 2 ounces, and on my luggage scale here at home, he's about 10 pounds, 10 and a half pounds. So he's definitely getting what he needs now. And I am pretty smitten with him. Pretty darn smitten. He sleeps in bed with us. He sleeps on my chest. That's just where he sleeps the best. He really doesn't cry unless he's hungry. He never cries when his diaper's wet. It doesn't make him angry. He's cried when he, gets too tired, but that's rare. So, yeah, I got a pretty darn good baby. He loves to be worn, and he doesn't mind the car as long as we're moving. Like, he doesn't like getting in his car seat, and he doesn't like me tightening the straps or anything, but he does pretty well in the car. Just yesterday we went to Illinois for a family outing, and he slept the whole way there and the whole way back. So he did really good. But yeah, this video is now 34 minutes, so I think I will end it, because I'm not going to edit it, and it's going to be very, very long. I apologize. Anyway, thank you for watching. I will make a video on SNS supplemental nursing systems soon. Probably right after this, honestly. But yeah, alright. Bye, everyone.